Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Lineup with Dave Prodan. I'm Dave Prodan, and this is episode 17. I am 36 years old. I'll turn 37 next month. I do not feel it. Now, that's not to say I don't stare in terror at the proverbial weight being added to the bench physically year after year. But in terms of emotional maturity, in terms of the stabilizing and fortifying of a mind and a heart and a spirit, in a way that improves me as a person and in a way that supports me truly engaging with people and communities I love, I feel like I'm nowhere near where I need to be in relation to the years I've clocked and the experiences I've been afforded. Someone recently put me across Pema Chodron's perspective on the idea of groundlessness. An American Tibetan Buddhist and spiritual icon, Chodron says, quote, "When we resist change, it's called suffering. But when we can completely let go and not struggle against it, when we can embrace the groundlessness of our situation and relax into its dynamic quality, that's called enlightenment." Now, I am not a religious person, and this is not a religious podcast, but good thinking is good thinking, and great thinking is great thinking. And Pema Chodron and her approach to groundlessness, and the person who introduced me to both, are all things I'd wished I'd come across sooner in life, but they're also things that I'm very happy I have right now. And Chodron's idea of relaxing into the dynamic quality of groundlessness is one that comes up over the course of these next conversations. All right, episode 17. 2020 is my 15th year at the ASP WSL. As I've talked about before, I worked retail at Rip Curl on and off for 7 years before that, with some freelance surf journalism stints overlapping that time. As a result, today's guest is someone I've had a more than passing familiarity with for 22 years, well over half my life. And as he and I sat for over 2 hours in what we've turned into a 2-part podcast, I couldn't shake thinking about how his and my dynamic had shifted over time from when I used to load him up with wetsuits and wax for the Boost Mobile Pro at Trestles when he'd stop by the shop, to when he'd challenge the value of sitting at a press conference for 2 hours while the media only spoke to Kelly, to his ascension to the world crown not once, but 3 times, the fame associated with it, and the late nights of tour partying, to his unfair pigeonholing as the conservative foil to the progressive movement of Dane Reynolds and Jordy Smith, to the times when tragedy would strike, and he'd occupy the emotional support pillar for surfers and staff alike, to his earth-stopping encounter with a great white shark on live broadcast at Jeffreys Bay, and the media feeding frenzy that resulted, to his eventual evolution into a global business and sporting icon and revered statesman of the championship tour, to this conversation sitting across from him on a couch, talking about where he's been and where he is and where he's going. Our guest today probably requires no further introduction than that. Please enjoy part 1 of the Lineup's conversation with Mick Fanning.
The good old clap, take 1.
That's right.
How many of you knew what you wanted to be when you were 7 years old? I did. I wanted to be a world champion.
Hey, is there honesty involved in this podcast? Can we be honest?
You can shut your fucking lips.
And then I'll just say, put them up, what? Let's go.
He's like, you look too pretty on the wave. Get ugly.
We can talk about DMT if you want.
I thought you were boxing.
Cool. Well, Mick, thanks for coming on the lineup. You are currently still rehabilitating from tearing your ACL during the Stab in the Dark All-Stars with Dane and Jordy in South Africa. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened, how you got injured, and what the rehab process has been like?
Yeah, look, I was sort of just getting towards the end of a surf, and just come out and just like cool away, a little barrel. And as I came out, I went to just do a standard, layback carve sort of thing. And halfway through, my knee just felt like it just popped out, and I knew instantly it was gone. From then on, it was just, all right, what's next? And so that was in August. It's now January, mid-Jan, and it's been a long process. I won't lie. If you can avoid doing an ACL, please avoid it, because it's the most boring injury ever. You can't do anything. It's just such a slow build up, and I'm 5 months out now. I actually just text Chris Prosser and my friend Taylor Cecil, who's doing all my rehab. And I'm like, all right, boys, when I get home, it's time to check the knee out. It's time to go surfing. I'm losing it.
Well, I was saying that around the office the other day when I reached out to you. I'm like, he must be so fucking bored because this is the fastest he's ever gotten back to me about doing anything. I'm like, I still have unanswered texts from like 10 years ago. And I just think like it must be like a particular type of torture for someone like you to be out of the ocean.
He just got me at a good time. No, look, I've been really busy actually. It's even though I've been, working on rehab and, trying to go to do something each and every day, there is still a lot of downtime. But I've been doing all kinds of different things, which has been awesome. It's been, I've done a whole lot of firsts in my life, which has been cool. So,
what have been some of those?
I learned how to scuba dive. I don't know why I did this, but I went and learned how to play golf. And
I think the golf thing's like a friendship thing because so many probably of your friends and my friends, they do it. And if you don't play, you're like, well, I'm missing out on like 4 hours of shit talking with my friends.
Yeah, look, I never thought of it that way. I just didn't like it. I played a little bit back in the day when we won a bunch of golf clubs during a teams event, and I started playing golf then. And then after about 2 months, I'm like, fuck this, I'm over it. And then I got an invitation to go down to the President's Cup in Melbourne. And they're like, oh, yeah, so you're going to have to play golf. And I'm like, oh, shit. And so I was like, okay, do I? Normally I just turn golf down, but Ash Barty, world #1 tennis player, invited me. I was like, well, it's too good of an opportunity not to go down and check out. So, I learned how to play golf, and I'm still really bad at it, but it's been pretty funny.
Well, that downtime too, I don't know if the genesis for this project was pre-injury, but you obviously announced the project Save the Shark. You're working with Taylor Steele and Nat Geo. Can you tell us about where that came from and what exactly it is? So my history with Taylor Steele, known each other for forever, and we did a project back in 2013 called Missing, where he pretty much kidnapped me for 3 weeks. We did 7 countries in 18 days or something like that, and on that journey we did some really crazy things. Like we went and sat with the gorillas in Rwanda, and went and did the running with the bulls in Pamplona, which is still the dumbest thing I've ever done, still the scariest thing I've ever done. I do not recommend that one bit. People was like, yeah, it's great, and it's seriously the stupidest thing. Never, ever again. How close did you get?
Oh, bull ran past me like meter you away. I'm just I'm out. But it's a pretty funny story. We're getting ready, and everyone's, we're standing with all these grandmas and grandpas, and everyone's just cruising, and then this person comes up and does this questionnaire. Do you know the rules? No. Do you know what the history of it is? Not really. Do you know you can die today? Oh, thanks. And then like 2 minutes before the bulls get let out, all the grandmas and grandpas and all the people that we thought we could beat disappear. And Taylor and I are just standing with these professional runners with sponsors all over their shirts. And it's just like, what have we done? And but it was, as I said, it's the dumbest thing I've ever done. I've never been so scared in my life.
You don't realize how big they are. Like a similar story was years ago. We were in Costa Rica for a surf trip, and we went to one of the town festivals one night, and they did the full Endless Summer thing where there's a bull ring. It's like a makeshift bull ring, and you're allowed to go in. There's not really any rules, and we did a fair amount of drinking, and we're like, oh, let's go in. And you look around and it's like there's no locals
No.
in the ring. Like it's just a bunch of drunken expat surfers or tourists, and they come out. The bulls are huge.
Yeah, they're massive. They're
Yeah.
massive. And we were towards the end of the festival too, so they saved the biggest bulls for last. And so yeah, that was it was really, really freaking scary. It was stupid. But anyway, from that, Taylor and I, we've sort of made an unspoken pact that if we go and do silly things, then you got to bring the other one along. And so I took him up to Alaska for a wild arc trip, and got to see bears and stuff like that. And then on that trip, we started talking about all these different things of what we can and can't do for the world and the environment. And we had this idea of going and facing sharks again. So yeah, we've just come back from the first installment of that. We're in the Bahamas and in Miami, and swimming with everything from lemon sharks, the reef sharks, to hammerheads, tigers, bull sharks, and met incredible people along the way, people that I learned so much from, and just really people that really care for these animals and really care for these. Now that I'm sort of looking at them, they're more like dogs of the sea. They've all got different emotions and stuff like that. But yeah, on this project, we're trying to look at why sharks behave the way they do, why they're coming back into different areas, why there seems to be more attacks,
Right.
And so it's really cool, and it's led us down some pathways that tie back to climate change, different currents changing in the oceans, and then also, reef healthiness, and then overfishing, which is everyone knows, but it's really cool how it's a huge 360 effect, and just learning about all these different things. I think people are going to hopefully look at sharks a little bit different just from watching this and experiencing this.
So the intent is like education and potentially like conservation for a lot of people once they look at the project.
Very much so. And there's almost two things. Obviously the conservation side of it, and the education side of it's one thing. For me, starting it was more of a personal journey as well, to see if I was okay and okay with looking at these enormous creatures in the ocean and being around them, and seeing what feelings I would get and see if anything came up. And it's been fun. It's been fun. There's been some great moments.
Well, and you are obviously uniquely positioned to participate in a project like this. I mean, one of the biggest notes in your career internationally was the incident at Jeffreys Bay in 2015. I vividly remember where I was when it happened. I think it's sort of like, it's almost like a 9/11 thing, like in surfing. When we talked about no sleep with kids and stuff, my kids were a little over a year old at the time, so I wasn't traveling, and it was like 5 or 6 in the morning California time. Yeah. And I admittedly had fallen asleep during the semifinals at my desk, and then I woke up right when the heat started. Yeah. And as it happened, I was still in this fog of like,
is that real?
That's not real. Yeah. And then my first thought was, well, he didn't get bit, so maybe I'm not going to even have to do anything about this. And then I immediately was just like, oh wow. Looking back through like the prism of a few years for you and even your learnings on this project, can you kind of break down what happened for you in the moment and how you view that today?
Yeah, look, it was sort of, I guess this was awesome to go on this journey as well and meet the people that I have, because it cleared up a lot of things for me. Just seeing what they thought, the experts thought,
right,
and this and that. And, for me, when it came to attack, I always thought it was going for my board. You know, I never personally saw teeth or, you know, I just saw the side of the thing, and in the opportunity that it could have just taken me out, it didn't. Right. It went for my board, and it was like, okay, well, maybe that's it. And so, you know, more talking about that, it was more, I think it was just cruising on past as they do at J-Bay. You know, they come up the point and cruise along, and it was like, oh, might just check this out real quick. And once it got stuck in my leg rope, it freaked out.
Right.
And then, yeah, so it was like, oh, I've got to get out of this situation. So it thrashed and, you know, hit me in the head. And but yeah, was just something that it would always just, it sort of went from, in my own head, attack to encounter to inquisitive, you know, and because that was in my brain, I wasn't a person to go, oh, let's cull every freaking shark under the sun. Like, that was never my view. It was like, it happened. Mm-hmm. It happened. It's like, how many people walk across the street and almost get hit by a car? You know? Yeah. It happened. But yeah, we sort of, on this journey, we investigate that a bit, and you know, I relive it a little bit more as well. So sort of explain exactly what was happening at what certain time and what was going through my head, and
right,
because in my head it went on for 10 minutes.
Sure.
And you see the footage and it goes for 10 seconds.
The footage, it's almost like if you had to direct the most like terrifying looking footage, like it almost did it organically in a lot of ways, because the wave comes up and you can't see you. But I always remembered, because I've watched it more times than I care to admit, but it seemed like you sensed something before it was even there, before the thrashing started. And I always wondered if that was, you know, just a heightened state of awareness from you because you were in competitive mode. And I always wanted to know if that was the case.
To be honest, because I'd been sitting there for, you know, probably about 5 minutes, I was almost just about to move and head down the point towards Julian. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, even watching the footage, I sit there and I scratch my nose and I'm thinking, and I'm like, all right. And I'm just about to go. And then I heard something.
Yeah.
Inquisitively, I won't lie, had nothing. So I just heard the splash, and I guess if I wasn't in competition mode, I probably would have reacted a little bit different. Probably wouldn't have been as sharp as where everything was, and trying to get out of its way. But yeah, there's so many different things to go down, and even just rewatching it, you know, last week, I saw things that I hadn't seen before that I'm like in my brain going, did that even happen? You know? And because I finally saw it, I'm like, oh, thank you. You know?
The whole thing about it feeling like 10 minutes, you know, I wonder if that's something that, you know, time kind of slows down for people like that when the adrenaline kicks in. It could be something like that in a lot of ways.
Very much so. It was total adrenaline. And yeah, everything just slows down. You know, you talk to different people in different things, you know, fighter pilot jets or, you know, people in really high pressure situations. Everything moves so slowly for them. And I guess the best analogy for surfers is when you're in a tube and you think you're getting a 50-second long tube and you come out and you're not even in it.
Sure. Well, I'd heard something similar. I don't remember where I heard on the radio somewhere. It was a psychologist breaking it down, and they were talking about action sport athletes and how there is a correlation between how they process adrenaline and why they're so good at what they do. And he said, look, it is in your DNA in the sense of, you know, they're probably the descendants of people that hunted mastodons, you know, and that strain of humanity survived because they were able to process adrenaline differently and take the mastodon down and feed the family, et cetera. And he said there's not a lot different in terms of how some people are able to process adrenaline in a really effective way compared to others.
Yeah, and it's funny, you meet these people like action sport heroes, and they're not comfortable until they're doing something really stupidly crazy.
Yeah.
You know, someone like a Travis Pastrana or a Robbie Madison or something.
Yeah.
If they're not doing something stupid, they're not in the room with you. They're like, what can I do to?
That's right. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you say that too, because there was an element of that conversation that associated with substance abuse too, because they said, look, it's the same center of the brain that needs that hit for a lot of people, you know, and a lot of times it's people trying to create an equilibrium between the highs and lows of what they do.
Yeah. Well, how many retired sports people have you seen just fall off the wayside due to substance abuse or something like that? You know, and that's probably why we're so wild when we do party. Too many beers, like
The you know, one of the things that I remember being on tour at the time that felt really eerie after that was all the other incidents with sharks for you that kept creeping up, whether it was sort of your first search back, I think it was in Cabarita or Casuarina, in the lineup at Chopu, in the lineup at Trestles, and what was going through your head when all this was happening?
Not too much. You know, I was still processing these type of things, but I think it's like when you buy a red car, you always keep seeing red cars.
Right.
You know, if that hadn't happened, maybe it was like, well, maybe that wasn't such a big deal. Like I'd seen sharks out Chirpu all the time.
Right.
All the time. You know, you swim with them.
Yeah.
You go into one of the other reef passes or in the lagoons and you totally swim with them.
Right.
You know, and that's how I processed it. That there was a couple of little incidents. I was sort of like, oh, you know, just making sure that other people knew what was going on. But since the incident, my heightened sense of awareness of seeing things in the water was tenfold.
Right.
I would see everything that moved and it would be like, oh, what's that? What's that? And, you know, you just, okay, that's that. You know, it's a stingray or oh, it's a turtle or, yeah, that was a fin. Let's just see where it pops up again. You know, so it wasn't like I wasn't crippled by, oh, there's a fin, I've got to go in. A lot of it was listening to my instincts as well, and where in the past I would probably say if I felt something, I'd be like, oh, stop being soft or, you know, get over it. Like you're tripping. Where now it's like if I feel that instinct, it's okay, just go in. Right. You don't have to be a hero. You don't. And I actually had that instance at, in J-Bay a couple of years later where I was just free surfing after the event and the waves were firing and something just didn't feel right. And I was like, as good as these waves are, I'm just going to go in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was proud of myself for actually doing that because the waves were so good. But once I got to shore, it was like, all right.
You felt like you.
I'm learning.
Yeah,
I'm learning for once.
does that? I mean, it's been a couple of years, not a whole lot of time, but like, do you still have that heightened sense of awareness today when you paddle out? Definitely.
Yeah, I'll see so much.
The decision to come back the very next year, I remember, was really intentional in that you made a few comments about wanting to face it and go early, and I just remember being totally floored by the psychological strength to be able to do that. And then you won the event. You know, it was sort of stuff a legend in a lot of ways.
Yeah, look, that was a trippy build up to that event. In my own mind, I had unfinished business. Mm-hmm. You know, I felt like I wanted to go and prove to myself that, all right, let's go and silence all the people that, you know, are building it up to be bigger than what it was. But also face my own fears and yeah, just, I guess, smoothing out a couple of the speed bumps that I had in my own brain. And it was, the build up to it was crazy. Like, you know, all year people are like, oh, you're going back to J-Bay, and they're building it up, building up. And I was like, I'm just going to go. I'm going to go early. I'm going to go and get all that thing sorted before everyone shows up.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable. And so went with a couple of mates, and then
you hurt your foot.
I
too.
did. I blew my ankle out second day in. But before that, we rocked up thinking there was going to be waves, and there was no waves, and it was flat for a whole day. And I was just like, okay. And then the nervousness and the anxiousness started building, and then the people I was with, Corey Wilson and Paul Daniels, we were sitting in the house, and I could feel their tension. And it got to a point where I'm like, fuck it, I'm going out.
Right.
And so I just, put on my wetsuit and just ran out and sat there in exactly the same spot for probably about what seemed like half an hour, was only like 3 or 4 minutes. But I sat there, and it all started flooding back, and the nervousness, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then a little wave popped up, and I rode a wave. And as soon as I kicked out of that wave, it was all done. Yeah. In my mind.
For sure.
My mind,
yeah.
It was done. All right, I'm settled. And actually caught a couple more waves, and then came in, and the boys were on the beach, and they're like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to get a fun board.
Yeah, sure.
So I went and grabbed the twin fin and paddled back out and surfed for another 2 hours.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a process, and then, that was all before the media showed up. And then second day I was there, blew my ankle out, and I'm just like, oh no. And I, judging from the scans and stuff, a lot of people don't know this, but I actually blew it out to a point where they were like, you're going to have to go home and get surgery. And I'm just like, fuck.
Yeah.
You could imagine how the world would have blown up if, he pulls out. He says it's an
scrutiny.
I'm like, nah, fuck it. I'll make this work. And so for 10 days leading up to the event, I worked with physios down in J-Bay that work on the event. Elmeen was incredible. And then when the WSL medical staff came in, I was working with Prosser day and night, doing everything I possibly could. And it was holding stable. Mm-hmm. It hurt like absolute hell. But every night just get it strapped, and just, I don't know, it was one of those events where things would just happen. If I needed a wave, one would just show up. I wasn't stressed out. I wasn't freaked out. I felt like once I surfed my first heat and, got through on the dodgy ankle and did all that, it was like, all right, anything else now is a bonus. And it's sort of, as I said, things just kept coming my way.
It's like, it's the ultimate, like, get back on the horse kind of story in a lot of ways. And I don't know if you've given any thought to this, but like, was there ever a reality in which you didn't go back to J-Bay?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I can imagine for someone like you being like, that's just sort of a ghost that's going to haunt me if I don't deal with it.
Yeah. Look, I was fine. Like I dealt with it. I felt like I dealt with it pretty good. Like the first 10 days after the incident, I wasn't doing great. But that was due to a few different factors, like not surfing, and people like don't go surfing, and also not being able to go outside my house because there was a media scrum outside the house 24/7.
Yeah,
and it's just like, can I just get on with life? Like, it's not, no one's making this any easier. Like, right. I don't know what you want by sitting outside my house. Is it you want to get a picture of me walking out my dog or something like that? And so But once even like when I went for that first surf and I saw a fin come through the wave, I was like, did that just happen? And so my mate Bearsy was driving a ski for me at the time, and I'm like, hey, Bear, let me just jump on real quick. And he's like, what's up? And I went, I think I just saw a shark. And sure enough, next set, we saw a fin go through the wave, and it was a little bull shark. And he's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, just step me off on a wave and we'll go in.
Solution oriented.
Yeah. And it was at a place that I don't really surf that often because,
you wanted to get away from the media frenzy.
Yeah. So we're doing a thing with 60 Minutes, and they wanted the first surf and this and that. And I was just like, well, all right, we're going to go somewhere else.
Did you, at that time, you said you were having a hard time in those 10 days. Did you seek help with anyone? Did you talk to anyone to help you through kind of what you're feeling? I talked to a bunch of different people. A lot of the times when I go through, heavy situations, it's family, friends, people that I really trust, people in my real inner circle. But then I also spoke to a couple of other friends that are in the Army Corps and stuff like that, and they would give me a bit of their experiences and stuff like that, and it was like, okay, well, I'm not feeling anything different, so it is part of the course. So you just have to work through it when those feelings came up, and it's like, all right, let's deal with this and make sure it's all good, and then move on. Mm-hmm. But there was definitely times there were once I saw footage underwater when we're doing the filming. Mm-hmm. I saw this footage and of someone coming up behind me. That freaked me out. That was probably the worst, because it was sort of like, oh, I'm looking at it from the shark's eyes now. Yeah. And every morning I'd be okay. I'd go to sleep fine. I'd be okay. And then every morning I'd wake up and just start having nightmares. Right. And I'd just be like freaking out. And I was like, all right, it's okay. You're in bed. You're not getting your feet bitten off. Yeah. But just crazy how the mind can just create these things in your head. And a lot of it was, all right, is that real? No, it's not real. All right, time to move on. I mean, you talk about, you seem really open to be talking to everyone, at the time. It doesn't seem like there's a stigma for you. Like if you're feeling something, you're able to find someone to talk to. Has that always been the case for you, or is that something you kind of matured into?
No, it's been something that I've had to work on. It's been something that I didn't know that was there. So I lost my brother when I was 17, and a lot of people in the around the area, they were like, be strong, and I'm like, what do you mean, like, be strong? And I thought it was like, show no emotion. Mm-hmm. You've got to be there for the whole family. You got to make sure that everyone is doing okay. And people coming up to me bawling, and I'm just like blank faced. Yeah, it's okay. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I put up this wall. Yep. And I had a wall where I'm like, I wouldn't let anyone in, but I wouldn't let myself out. Mm-hmm. Obviously I'd talk to my friends, but even in those situations, I would be extremely like, I'm good. And it wasn't until I go back into my own room by myself at night and just cry. And I remember first time I ever met Michael Gervais, who's sports site guy, legend bloke. I was in his room, and I'd never really told anyone the full story of how it all went down, and how I found out and how I had to go and tell my parents, and within the first half an hour of knowing this guy, I'm in his office just bawling my eyes out. Sure. And he's like, have you ever let down that wall? And I was like, I didn't know I had one. Yeah. And it was it was a really big learning curve for me, and I learned to be able to break down that wall, but it was more like a roller door now, so I can put it up when I need to.
Yeah.
And so I don't get affected by just, off-passing comments or something like that. Like you walk down the street, hey, shark guys, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect you. You just keep moving on. But then when I feel like I'm in a trusted area where I'm in a place where if I'm going to break down, the people around me, I know I can trust that they can pick me up. So yeah, that's how I learned to, keep the wall up at times, but also put it down. So that was something that, I still work on it today. It's something that takes time, and it's something, it's like anything. You've got to practice these things and, show trust in people.
I mean, I would also comment that it might also be something that you've been able to, when there are other situations where people are hurting, take a leadership position and help them through it in a lot of ways. I remember vividly, in Puerto Rico in 2010 when Andy passed away, and you were the one calling the meetings and getting people together and like reaching out in a way that was really impressive to me in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of people just hadn't had that practice in processing trauma. Yeah,
look, I guess in that situation, I could see that everyone was just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And no one knew what was going on. And I sort of just, half of me was like, yeah, I'm extremely devastated. I'm extremely hurting. Yeah. But I knew I had other people that weren't dealing with it well. And I had my friends and I was like, all right, I know how to look after myself and deal with it when I have time to deal with it. But you got to make sure that these people are okay, because if they're not okay, then something bad might happen again. Well, no one wants that. Yeah. So it was, I think a lot of it was a lot of the processes that I'd learned over the years to deal with heavy situations. I just went, okay, let's just put myself on the back burner, because I knew I had the strength personally to deal with it. But yeah, go in and just make sure that everyone sort of had a little bit of direction and knew that it's going to be okay. We're all going to work through this together. And it wasn't like a thing like I wanted to be the hero or anything like that. It was just I cared for my friends and I cared for the people that were hurting, and it's like the only way to deal with it is get everyone together and let's deal with it together.
Yeah.
So that was my process, and I would go home once again after the day or the night or whatever, and I'll give myself permission to deal with it then.
Sure.
And then once again it sort of got to the end of the event in a group of people that I really trusted, and that's when anything that I couldn't deal with by myself, that's when I'd ask them for help. So it wasn't like I'm the only soldier out there thing. It was like, all right, I just know when the right time for me to
there was a void that needed to be filled.
Yeah.
Big time. Well, you mentioned Sean before, and I want to wind the clock all the way back to Penrith. You're born in Penrith, and then you and your family moved to Tweed at 12, and that's when you start surfing. I guess you started before, but when you really got into it, can you tell us about those first few years on the Gold Coast with your friends, who you mixed it up with, and how you really started to become, I guess, obsessed in a way to the point that you got very, very good?
Yeah. It was funny. We used to live in Ballina, and then we moved up to the Gold Coast, and I was starting high school.
At Palm Beach.
At Palm Beach Currumbin High School. And then my brother Sean was coming, and anyway, we're meant to go, and I was meant to go and sign up for soccer for the soccer season, I was so obsessed by soccer. Surfing, I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll just do it because my brothers are doing it and I hang out and, I don't want to get left at home if everyone's at the beach all day. So we went to go and sign on for soccer and went totally the wrong day. No one was there. I was like, oh, okay. And after that, like Sean's yelling at me, don't you take too long. I'm like, why? And he's like, oh, I'm going down to D-Bar to see if I can get sponsored by Quicksilver. And I'm like, yeah, cool. And he was so stoked when soccer wasn't open. He's like, yes, we're off. And so we went down to D-Bar and just went surfing. And I came in just before Sean. And I remember Denny Taquino and Scott Peacock came up to me and then they're like, hey, how you going? I'm Denny and Scott from Quicksilver. I was like, oh, you're looking for my brother. Like, how would they know that we're brothers? Never even met, And they're like, you guys are brothers? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, oh, well, we're going to sponsor him, but we'll sponsor you too. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I never even had interest from people playing soccer. And pretty much I never went to sign on for soccer.
How old were you here?
I was 12.
It's that easy, everyone.
Yeah, it's that easy. No, it was just, I guess it was just, a lot of it was meant to be.
Timing.
Yeah. And my brother was pissed that he thought he was going to be the only one sponsored by Quicksilver in the house.
He just had his sticker pack halved because you were getting the other half.
Yeah. Well, he would steal all my shit anyway. And it was like, yeah, I was stoked. Like I was getting clothes for free. Like growing up, we didn't really have that much money. So mum would sew on different brand labels onto like Kmart clothes and stuff like that. So it was like, yes, they're actually real.
That's right. Yeah. We used to go to Payless Shoes and then rip the fake logos off. Be like, no, these are Vans. Like,
yeah, exactly. Or you'd steal Converse labels and stick those on, and like we all did it, and it was so it was a really, really cool time. And then from there, we met Dingo, so we'd surf with Dingo a lot, and then met Damon Harvey, and so that was sort of there was more of us in the group, but they were two of the the leading kids at the time, especially Dingo. Dingo was like this super kid. And so it was always like, all right, how do we get as good as Dingo? And then Parko moves down halfway through the year.
And you guys are still 12? 12
to 13, yeah. Dingo's like 6 months older than us. And we all went to the same school. We all sat at the same seat. And yeah, Parko moved down from the Sunshine Coast halfway through the year. So that was our posse, and we'll just surf with each other every day and we'd just try and push each other each and every day. And it was just, I didn't know how to be a pro surfer or whatever. I was just following those guys' leads, like, well, I guess you got to do that.
I was going to ask, what is a 13-year-old sponsored surfer? What do you have to do at that point? Or what does Quicksilver expect you to do?
Yeah, not much. Like it wasn't getting paid or anything like that. It was just like put stickers on your board, wear the wetsuits, wear the clothes.
And are you guys thinking, I'm going to compete, I'm going to win a world title, or is it just Dingo's better than me, I got to get that good?
Yeah, it was sort of like we all had that premonition as a kid. Like we'd go out surfing and it was like, all right, we're going to do a 20-minute heat. Whoever wins this heat is going to be the world champion. And so you'd always have that competitive, and then you'd do your regional, your junior, your state events and Australian titles. And then the boys would go on to worlds. I'm like, wow, how do you do that? And then, I was just trying to keep up with those guys. And I think that was a lot of my success. Or I've told Joel and Dean and that I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am today without those guys. Yeah. Like they didn't know it at the time, but I was trying so hard to beat them in every situation. And I think that's sort of where our friendship grew too, because even though we were competing against each other, we all respected each other because we knew we were all just leapfrogging each other, and it went from cadets into juniors into QS and then on the CT, and then first year on Dingo's and mine, I think it was the second year, we're all in the top 10. It's like, how the fuck did we get from being little brat kids to here?
But you hear that time and again, whether it's like Andy and Bruce or CJ and Damien, or like even people that don't have brothers, they have like a very tight group of people that's like, my goal was just to be better than that person. And then that tension over the years, that's how we got to where we were.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's, I think people need to respect those relationships and know that that's what got them there. And that's something that we talk about now. We talk about it openly with each other. And it's like, if one of us is having a hard time or one of us does good, we're all there to go, yeah, awesome. Like, really stoked for you. Or, all right, do you need help? You've helped me out in the past, so I'm always there for you. And so we've sort of got this unspoken brotherhood in a way.
I don't know if this was sort of, the media building it up, but I do vividly remember hearing on this side of the Pacific, like a major bidding war for Mick Fanning. And it's probably because I worked at the Rip Curl Surf Center at the time. So you're surfing for Quick, and then is that true? Did you have a bunch of brands coming after you? If so, at what age was this, and how did you kind of respond?
I don't think it was a major bidding war. It was just
within the surfing world. We like to within some circles.
Yeah, no, it was. I was sponsored by Quicksilver at the time, and I was getting what I thought was awesome money. I could buy myself lunch every day. And then I get a phone call from Mick Ray from Rip Curl, and he's like, "Oh, we want to sponsor you, and we want to offer you X amount of dollars." And I was like, "Is this a prank call?" Like, fully asked him. And he's like, "No, it's not a prank call." Like, I'm like, I don't really know if this is a prank call or not. Maybe it's best if you just ring back when Mum gets home. And so
I would imagine what he had to tell his boss after he got off the phone. He's like, "So is he really excited?" He's like, "No, he told me to talk to his mom."
Oh, I was excited. Don't worry. It was more to the fact that because we used to prank each other all the time, I was like, "Is this a freaking prank call?" And sure enough, when Mum gets home, he rings back and they chat, and within, it was sort of like the offer was there. I'm like, well, how do we, it'd be awesome to go and jump on that brand, but I'm contracted to these people, and they're like, don't worry about that. We got that. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'm in. And so that was pretty much the bidding war.
And how old were you at that point?
I was, when was that? I was just 16 at the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. So that would have been 97.
97, started 97, yeah. So
we're coming up on 23 years.
Yeah.
Or around then.
Yeah, it's been a great relationship. But yeah, it was, I remember, so Mick rang, and then within I think it was a week or two, had Gary Dunn in our house with contract.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, sign away.
Was part of the contract at the time CT wildcards for you? Or was that part of the appeal? Or I'm sure the financial part was a big driver. Was there anything else around the relationship that you're like, I'm going to be the one guy on this program, or I'm going to get this opportunity?
No, because at the time, Rip Curl had such a strong junior team.
Yeah. Who else was on the team?
Zane Harrison.
Yep.
Zane was like the man at the time too.
Yep.
Like, I think the year after in 98, he won Sunset, and then he won the pipe trial. It was like, oh shit. If I want to be part of this team, I'm going to have to be stepping up my game. And Darren O'Rafferty, they was sort of the three guys that I would, and Hedgie, Hedgie seemed like the oldest man on earth at the time. He was only like 2 years older than me. He had a beard already. It was like, shit. But that team, even just that group within ourselves, really pushed ourselves. And it sort of was like, in my contract, there was like, okay, if you win a junior, you get this X amount. And then they're like, if you win a QS and then a world tour event, I'm just like, am I reading the right contract here? And it was like, wow, I can make that much money if I win an event. But I was like, that's so out of my league. And then, it was only like 2 years after that, I started getting wild cards into the events. And and I was totally out of my league at the time, but it was just such a great experience. And it was just, it just all moved really fast, like faster than what you would ever, try and script.
You mentioned your brother Sean. He tragically passed away in '98 in a car accident with Joel Green. And then it felt like, based on what you said after you won in 2001, that there was a dotted line between that moment and your relationship to Sean and coming out and winning bells.
Yeah, it was. There's a few things that sort of happened. Obviously the one that we spoke about earlier about the being strong and putting up my guard and this and that. But internally, I had this drive. I always had drive, but now I had a focus of drive. It's like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go out and do this. And even still to this day, I'll be sitting there and when I was surfing, that was a place where I felt like I really reconnected with Sean. And so I always felt like this energy was there. Sometimes he was probably off doing, looking after someone else. But a lot of the time, a lot of the major times that, the real clutch times in my career, it felt like he was with me. And that was really special. But yeah, it ignited a fire in me that just, I never had felt before. It was like, I'm doing this and no one's getting in my way.
Yeah. What did it feel like? Because I think, 18 when you won bells, 2001?
19 at the time.
19, and you given a wild card because it's sponsors event. And I remember vividly watching the images and the videos, and you had Danny Wills in the final, and you could feel the release of energy after you came in and won. What was it like?
It was crazy. Like, that year was such a build up. We started on the Gold Coast, and to be honest, it was the first time that I found out that I had scoliosis because my back just was blown. And so I was like, a lot of the time I was working through that. So I was just so focused on making sure my back was okay. And then ended up getting second to Taj at the first ever Quickie Pro on the Gold Coast. And then went down to Newcastle. I don't think I had a great event there, but then went on to Margaret River and ended up winning Margaret River. And we had to fly out that night over to Bells. And I was just like, I was with Hedgie, so we were drinking beers the whole way. And I was just so hungover. I was like, oh, but still on such a high. And the Rip Curl event was like, all right, just go out and do your best. You got no expectations and this and that. And I was just surfing. I was just like, all right. I got to surf against my favorite surfers. And then, before I knew it, I was in the final. And I was like looking over and trying to say good luck to Willsy, and he just brushed me. And I was like, okay. And it's funny too to have that first ever World Tour final against Willsey, because he was a big rival of my brother Ed growing up. So it was sort of like, and one of my first ever surfboards was one of his hand-me-downs. And so known him for so long, it was really special to be out in the lineup. And I was sort of thinking, okay, let's do it that way. Let's make this real special. And he was like, no, fuck you. You know, I'm competing here. This is my livelihood and this and that. And just from that 35-minute final, I learned so much. And yeah, just the way that people compete and this and that. And but yeah, it was probably the emotion was just shock. You know, every day, like I'd walk down the car park at Bell's and I'd see myself and I'm like, oh, I got through another heat. And I'd check out the scores and scores was sort of up there with the other guys and just kept going. And I was just tripping out. And yeah.
It is like, I mean, it's such a funny thing because it has Bells has this aura in the surfing world as sort of the place where the tribe gathers. And, you know, I remember my first time there too, it feels different, you know, and the Watherong people there talk about it being one of the intersecting points in the song lines. And it has always felt like a spiritual home for surfing. Yeah,
very much so. You know, you spoke about the Watherong people, that, you know, their heritage and their story there is so rich and powerful, and you feel the cliffs, like the natural Colosseum there. You feel like there's so many stories in that cliff, and it's not like other events where everything's so fast paced. You've got your 10-15 minute drive out there, and so you've got time to decompress. Where, you know, if you're at the Gold Coast, like I always felt like the Gold Coast was just high anxiety for me. And then, yeah, it was so different to when you actually live there, and then when you compete there, it's just totally different. But every time I went to Bells, it was like, I just feel calm. And so that was always a big thing for me. And I guess also having pretty much all my sponsors down there was another thing where I had all this support, and I almost had a routine down there that was easy, you know. But yeah, the whole sense of that place to me is just, it's calming, but it's extremely powerful. And I think people, you're away from people too when you're competing, so it's yeah, it was really, really special. And it also too, that was my first ever trip for being a sponsored surfer. I went down with Will Lewis and Andrew Murphy for Quicksilver back in the day, and I was like, best thing ever. You know, I got to watch Matt Hoy ring the bell, and then straight after that, Occy won the skin. So automatically I fell in love with it back then. And every time I went down, I always had a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, in the many, many versions of the Mick Fanning story, Bells is such a foundational pillar, you know, and it was something that continues to this day, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I wanted to finish my career there too, is because I knew I was calm and I knew I'd be able to soak it all in, where, you know, home is home, but I would have been so sidetracked with everything going on. I wouldn't have let it sink in. So it was really special to have that event there, and yeah, just an event that I've always really respected, but also just felt great.
So that's it. That's part one of our conversation with Mick Fanning. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're looking for something to keep you fed until next week's lineup, the first WSL Challenger Series event of the season, the Sydney Surf Pro, is on from March 9 through 14. Check it out at worldsurfleague.com or the WSL app. Also, the championship tour is around the corner with the opening event, the Corona Pro Gold Coast, starting on March 26th. And if you haven't listened to our other pods, please download, listen, rate, and subscribe if you like them. They're available wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next Tuesday for part 2 of the Fanning Pod. I hope you get waves wherever you're at, and we'll see you then.
Do you like that? Well, if so, subscribe over there, and then watch more videos over there. And then tell us your favorite videos down there. It's a 3-step process. Do them all now.